A video I wanted to watch today, though, guys, wanted us to watch Avowed. Force Gaming dropped that he played 20 hours of Avowed. And I think we need to give that game a fair shake because I kind of ripped on it for being 30 frames per second on consoles. But you know what? It's fine. Listen, if it's 30 frames per second on consoles, completely okay. All the more reason why you should buy a Starforge PC. Let me ask you guys something. Do y'all think that Avowed has the potential? Again, this is Obsidian's next big RPG. Do you think Avowed has a chance to be Game of the Year next year? Which, by the way, release frame is going to be somewhere, what, in February? Avowed's dropping in February? Hell no. Really? Y'all don't think it's going to be? Y'all don't have it? Y'all don't think it has a chance? Oh, because GTA 6. Yeah, I forgot about that. Old Obsidian is gone.
All right, so Avowed. Wow. Just wow. I didn't really have many expectations going into this one. From the little gameplay footage that I'd seen over the years, nothing about the game was really hooking me or leaving me with much anticipation. But man, after playing this game, it's an entirely different story. This feels like a condensed, more jam-packed take on Skyrim. Imagine if you took Skyrim and put it in one of those vacuum seal bags. You just sucked all the air out and squished everything together. That's what Avowed is like. There's little in the way of open expanses for you to wander through, sure. But instead, what you're left with is points of interest, camps, huts, enemy outposts, caves. There's just stuff to see and do everywhere you turn. And I'm comparing it to Skyrim because there's some obvious connections between the two, but I don't quite think it's going to reach the heights of Bethesda's masterpiece. However, nevertheless, even just from my early preview of the game, I'm pretty confident that Obsidian has built something worthy of praise here. While it is smaller in scope, Avowed still manages to deliver a sense of exploration and discovery in a fantasy setting infused with Obsidian's charms, loaded with secrets, puzzles, and loot to be found, interesting characters and places to discover. I don't know, man. I'm just impressed, frankly. I really enjoyed what I've seen thus far, to the point that Avowed is now one of my most anticipated games of next year. I liked it that much. So let's talk about it. Things begin as per usual at character creation, although unfortunately for whatever reason they didn't let us record the intro to the game, maybe due to spoilers, I'm not exactly sure, but all of the expected stuff is here. You're going to select your character's appearance from a wide range of options, including the godlike features that you want on your face, which ties directly into the narrative. We'll get to that. You also pick your background, which determines your starting weapons and unlocks certain dialogue options. And then after a brief tutorial introducing you to the basics, you arrive at the docks of the first playable open world zone, which are the Dawnlands. And here you will immediately meet a few new characters who then lay the groundwork of the game's story, which is you are playing as a dying breed of god-touched beings, and you specifically have been sent on this mission to help the people of the living lands. Help them with what exactly? Well, there's a mysterious plague that's been spreading, wreaking havoc on the people, creatures, and environment. Your goal is to solve the mystery of that plague, helping however you can, while also dealing with these magical crystals that whisper to you from time to time as you play through the game. And there's also the fact that you stick out like a sore thumb. Most people think that the god-touched beings are a thing of the past, yet here you are, a bit of a fish out of water, but you're in good company as there are literal fish out of water people walking around these lands as well. One of them acts as your companion. And that's about all I will say for the story stuff. I will add though, I have quite liked most of the characters I've come across. Story and narrative and dialogue stuff at the bottom of the barrel in terms of things that pull me into a lot of these games, even fantasy RPGs that are dialogue heavy. I'm more about the world building and the immersion and storytelling through exploration and doing stuff. But nevertheless, I've liked what I've seen here. Like, I've quite enjoyed these characters. The game does include the expected dialogue options, with the majority of the quest and interactable NPCs giving you multiple responses or questions that you can ask them throughout. Lots of personality in these characters, a fair bit of humor in here as well, and some great VO delivery. I liked it across the board. Okay, so you're on the docks, you got the story basics, you got the lay of the land. Now it's time to get out and go exploring. As I said, Avowed feels like a condensed, jam-packed version of Skyrim. And I'm referencing Skyrim here, but really you could compare this to any large-scale open-world RPG.
What? Okay, yeah, looks good. Game looks pretty cool. Does the graphics just seem really blurry right here? Is it just maybe it could just be like the capture, like maybe the capture settings or something. You know what I mean?
RPG, because it's like those, but in a much tighter
Hold on, let me make sure I've got this on that. Yes, 1440p. Okay.
package. It's what I refer to as not open world, but open zone. You've got these rather big single zones that you are free to explore within their bounds, but there are bounds all around the edges that you can't go past. And how big is it? Well, we only had a preview which only gave us access to a single zone, but I get the sense that this game could be rather substantial. This preview gave us access to the one area after the tutorial, that being the Dawnlands. In this zone alone, I have already spent roughly 15 hours with the game. That is how long it took me to go around and see just about everything here. But not even everything, because we didn't even have access to the city of Paradise, which is a rather large, taking up a good chunk of the center portion of the map that was restricted from the preview, presumably because it progresses the story into the subsequent zones. So my guess is that this first zone could easily have a solid 20-ish hours of content if you spend time thoroughly going around looking for everything, checking in every corner, searching around for loot and hidden treasures and secrets, and there's a lot here to see, which we'll get into. So pulling back from the Dawnlands into the world map, we can see here what looks to be the rest of the available play space that will have come launch.
So look, this area right here that he was in, he said 15 to 20 hours. Then I give you kind of a scope of everywhere. Looks massive.
This is referred to as the Living Lands, and as you can see, the first zone, Dawnlands, makes up just a small fraction of this overall map, which has...
What game is this? This is Avowed, guys. This is Avowed. I think it drops sometimes first quarter of 2025. Looks mostly like mountains. So you're saying we can't walk on this because they're mountains? So you would only be able to go into these zones? I don't know. Yeah, we'd have to see. They you could be right, though. Could be right.
It's me quite excited that the game could be fairly decent in size. I assume that there's going to be at least 4 to 5 zones in total based on what we're seeing here and the number of sections that have fairly detailed sketches to them, similar to the Dawnlands. But that is just a guess right now. Either way, if the first zone is any indication, this game could be pretty big, because again, I'm guessing if you're really thorough, like completionist style, you got like 15 to 20 hours of content just in that first zone. There's a lot there. Okay, so back to the Dawnlands. You have just arrived, you're at the docks, you meet the characters, you've got your companion, the main story quest has been laid out, you got some stuff to go investigate. What's next? Well, it's time to start doing the open zone exploration action RPG things. You're going to be looking for loot, talking to NPCs, and picking fights with the local bandits, lizards, skeletons, and spiders, all of which there's plenty of all around. This game is dense with points of interest and places to see. I mean, you are practically tripping into new POIs everywhere you walk. I counted 35 named areas in total in the Dawnlands alone. Now, I'm not going to walk you through each and every one, but I will highlight some of my favorites. After exploring the first major town, which I spent a good 30 to 60 minutes in, going around, picking up all my quests,
right here, guys.
Interacting with the vendors, rooting in corners and in buildings, and going up scaffolding, looking for hidden treasure, which there was a lot of. After that, I then set out west of town and discovered this lighthouse. There were some notes outside that hinted at the thing being haunted. Scaling the scaffolding around its exterior rewarded me with a bunch of loot, including these unique move speed enhancing boots, and I found a treasure map that sketched out the location of some even more valuable loot. I later found that treasure, by the way, using the visual guide of the map marking its location, and
what makes people think this game looks good? Well, I'm basing it off of the first gameplay I ever saw of it, which only took place in like a little small dungeon, and I didn't think it looked good. But seeing like the actual open world aspect, I'm a big sucker for aesthetic world exploration, like feeling like I look at everything and like being like, oh my god, I want to go there. I want to explore everywhere. Does it feel like a ginormous world that I can get lost in? And it may present that. This may actually present that. I think and exploration is a big thing for me. Nothing sucks worse than playing a game that you think you're gonna be able to like explore every rock, every cave, every little aspect of it, and then realizing about halfway through the game that the world is much smaller than what you originally anticipated. And like that's a very demoralizing feeling. However, there are certain games that rise above that and go, no, this game's a lot bigger. Elden Ring, great game. Not only did it have like the base world map, what was the area you can also teleport to? What was the zone, guys? You went inside and it was like stars in the sky. Nokrin? Okay, so yeah. So Nokrin, the underground area, right? Okay, so like what Elden Ring did was like it presented you a map, and then it was like, well, wait, there's more. And then there was like a whole nother area you could go to at the north, and then like it was, and then of course the DLC and stuff like that. Those games just, man, they tickle the balls just right. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is another game like that. Not only is it like, hey, here's this huge open map that you saw in Breath of the Wild. Wait, there is the islands above that you can go play. Wait, now there's the underground area, which matches literally the base map above. So it's like you're essentially getting like 3 times the real estate. And that is like one of the best feelings you could get when playing an open world RPG.
And I love when games do this. They give you a sketch of the surrounding landscape and landmarks and then Xing the spot where the treasure can be found. And you just kind of got to figure it out as you're moving through the world. I figured it out. I found the treasure. Wasn't super hard, but again, I like when they do this instead of just placing the pin on your map. Leaving the lighthouse, following the coast to the north into the fractured shore area led me to Dehennigan's cottage. Now, I had already spoken to the owner of this building back in town. She told me that her house had been overrun by these Zorups, which are basically like these big lizard people. And she was right. They had set up camp all around the rock islands leading towards her home, with even more found inside. I cleared the cottage, but something didn't quite seem right with a painting on the wall depicting lizard people holding hands and dancing with humans. Seems like there's something more to this, and there was in fact, but I won't spoil it. Fast forward, after a bit more exploration, managing around with loot and doing my inventory and hanging out and chatting with my companion, I then stumbled across this old fisherman's hut with a note inside warning us to avoid a nearby cave as something dangerous was lurking inside. So of course, I immediately seek out that cave, finding one right around the corner. Stepping inside of the ruinous caverns, I was then introduced to my very first dungeon. There's many of these scattered throughout the game, presumably. I have already found 3 in this first zone. This one was a cave system chock full of spiders. Traversing deeper inside eventually led me to my first real boss encounter against a rather large spider queen. This was a pretty tough fight, actually. I ended up dying during it in attempt number 2. The spider queen was dead, and I was rewarded with a new unique armor piece as a result, which I think I'm still wearing 15 plus hours later. There's also an old cemetery that's being ransacked by grave robbers. There's abandoned ruins full of booby traps ghosts with some valuable treasure up top. There's a massive subterranean temple that's loaded with enemies, puzzles, bosses, a nefarious NPC who's got some ulterior motives, and a shrine to one of the old gods. And that is just 6 of the, count them, 35 named points of interest in the Dawnlands alone. Like I said, there's a lot here. You are practically tripping over interesting locations at every turn. And as you've probably...
That's amazing. The only thing I worry about is I hope that initial area is not the most like heavily dense area of points of interest, right? Like that to me is a bummer. We've played games in the past too that have done that, where it's like there'll be one area that's extremely dense, and it was like that was the area that demos and other things hit, and then you get outside of those areas and it's like nothing. It's just barren land, right? I'm not saying that's going to be the case here. I don't believe it is, but that's one thing that that would suck. Again, nothing feels more rewarding than going out into the world past like even the base version of the game, like just like not even the base version of the game, like the first like 15, 20 or 25 hours, and then all of a sudden it's like you get hit with another like, oh my god, this world is massive. It gets even bigger, more things to even explore. And I would say one of the games that let me down with that was Dragon's Dogma 2. I didn't play 1, but a lot of people say 1 was like 2. But Dragon's Dogma 2 let me down because its combat was great. Combat was some of the best RPG combat I've ever played. Its world, beautiful. Arguably the most gorgeous game I've ever played. But its exploration it started off so strong, and then suddenly I realized, wow, the world is a lot smaller than I originally thought it was going to be.
Noticed as well in the footage you've seen thus far, the game leans heavily into thoroughly exploring these places. There's stuff to find everywhere. While you're moving through the world, you're going to see in every corner these winding paths, ledges and scaffolding to climb, hidden rooms that you got to try to figure your way into, and all of these inevitably lead to something, some valuable loot or treasure chest or unique item. And they give you a ton of reasons to check in every corner and around every bit of this environment for that very reason. Just about everywhere you look, where you think there might be something, there's probably something, including behind quite a few waterfalls. Make sure you're checking back there.
Nice.
You can mantle onto most everything in the environment. There are a few exceptions, some buildings and some mountainous areas you can't, and then all around the parameter of the mountainous region on the edge of the zone, you can't go up that, but everything within it is pretty much free reign. The world is chock full of breakables, including many different contextual barriers that you can do something to bypass. You've got basic breakable objects like crate and barrel barrels, which you'll sometimes find resources, currency, or consumables inside. But then you've got things like weak walls that can be blown open or smashed through with certain heavy hitting attacks or charges. There are webs and other organic type barriers that can be burned through. There are grates that can be frozen to weaken their integrity, and which then allows you to break them. You can freely swim in any of the bodies of water. Many times you're going to find resources, chests, or even hidden caves underneath some of these locations. You can even freeze water anywhere, which creates a temporary platform. You're going to find things like these rock formations out in the ocean that can only be accessed this way, and a lot of these formations have some loot, so you want to...
Guys, okay, hold on. And maybe it's because Dragon Age Velguard, we watched a number of videos on it. I haven't played it. I did tell you guys the other day that we need to quit taking people's opinions. We need to just go play it ourselves, right? And give it a go. But when we watched the gameplay leading up to the launch of Velguard, like it didn't look that good. It didn't look that enticing to me. This looks good. This looks way better. Velguard is fun. Okay, all right. I mean, again, I've heard different comments. I think the Steam reviews are actually pretty good. The people on Steam have actually said it. He changed his mind 2 days ago. No, I just said 2 days ago that we should give it a go, right? We should give it a go at some point, preferably when it's on sale.
Want to freeze, make your pad, jump up, collect the loot. There are special generators that need to be struck with some form of electricity in order for you to activate them, often opening doors or secret areas. Yeah, lots of secrets, lots of things to discover, and a lot of focus on exploration, on rooting around the environment. Even though this isn't like one continent's worth of open world and it's more an open zone kind of game, there's so much here and there's so much exploration and things to find within that space, which is why I said it's like Skyrim vacuum sealed into a condensed package. That's how I felt while playing through this game. Now let's talk about combat. One of my most important things in any game that I play, I want the game to feel good when I'm engaging with enemies. I would say the combat in Avowed feels pretty darn good. If we're continuing to make comparisons to Skyrim, which I get, probably getting tired by now, it feels leagues better than that, like substantially better. I mostly played melee, going with this fighter build, primarily using a shield as well as a one-handed weapon, although I was starting to make use of ranged more often, using muskets and pistols later on into my session. Everything here has a nice sense of impact, good sounds, good animations.
I like it.
Enemies responding to being struck. All around, I think the combat felt good. You've got basic attacks as well as heavy variations. You can block, dodge, and parry, and the whole combat dance revolves around balancing your attack cadence to manage a stamina meter that you don't want to overcommit because then you'll be drained. So it's all about dealing some damage, then avoiding enemy attacks by either blocking, dodging, or parrying, and then doing a counter, all while trying to make sure you do not deplete your stamina because that puts you out of commission waiting for its recovery. Enemies have some sort of a stagger bar as well. You build this up, and when it's full, any attack you perform will then give a big, heavy damage dealing combo. Crouching will put you into stealth, which allows you to perform sneak attacks from behind if you remain undetected. The game's got a built-in self-revive called Second Wind. Basically, you can use this once per fight as it's on a big cooldown, but it gives you a second opportunity. Your primary resource is this thing called Essence. It is spent whenever you cast special abilities or spells. If you're playing like a caster class, they do have mages in this game. For me, my main spell that I was using this on was Charge. Essence can be refilled with consumables, but then also when you kill enemies, they'll drop these little small orbs that give you a small amount of essence as well. And also in combat, you have access to a radial menu. You can pull it up, it will pause the game, and then this lets you select certain abilities. You can consume potions or other consumables like food and essence restoring ones that give you buffs. There are throwables like grenades and different elemental ones. And then some of your companion abilities are in here as well, because yes, as mentioned, you do have a companion. The game basically gives you one right at the start after arriving at the docks in the first main town. His name is Kai. He's got a backstory and all that, but in terms of combat, he's got a few useful skills where he can engage with and stun enemies. He can apply burning debuffs and quite a few other things. Now, other than helping in combat, Kai? He's also going to chime in with little quips now and then. You're going to build a relationship over time. The game has a whole camping system where you can do some managing and progression stuff.
This is a single player game, yes.
Companions. Now, I do assume that there's going to be other companions as well that you unlock later on in the game. But with all my time in the first zone, Kai was the only one that
Really? No romance in Avowed? Okay.
I ever came across. As you've seen in the footage, there's quite a variety of the typical fantasy enemies that you're going to be fighting. You're going to see bandits, you're going to see the Zorops, those lizard people. There are spiders, you got skeletons, you got ghosts, you got ogres, and a variety of different bosses. I don't know exactly, I didn't keep tabs, but I want to say that I saw like 10 to 15 bosses in my time with the game. The party camp, as I mentioned, all throughout the world are these camping locations. They're designated areas, and it acts as a place for you to rest. Going there will restore your health, and you can use it to pass the time, sleeping through the night.
So like BG3.
Restart at the daytime.
Yeah.
You can also talk to your companions, having a little dialogue and building a relationship. And then there's also quite a
Whoa. He said building a relationship. Hold up. Let's see what their options are.
Having a little dialogue.
I've got a question about you. That's all. Good night. Why is the soul plague called the Dream Scourge? What can you tell me about Paradise? All right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if you go through all these options, at some point you can, let them teach you magic tricks.
Log and building a relationship. And then there's also quite a few management
Friends
and
on the
progression
game.
systems here. You've got a stash, which is storage for any spare items you don't want to carry around. The game does have encumbrance. It wasn't too oppressive, but I ran up against being fully encumbered a couple of times in my play session. There's a cauldron where you can go to craft food and make upgrade materials. You've got a workbench to upgrade your weapons and armor, increasing their stats as well as their rarity. And there's an enchanting system specifically for that unique yellow gear where you can use rare materials to enchant the item, adding either enhanced effects that it already has or additional effects, some variety in terms of customizing for your build. And then you've got this totem shrine. You find totems as you play. These are dedicated to the old gods, and activating the totems reward various passive buffs, which give you some just nice additional enhancements.
Okay.
Now, in terms of progression, this is an RPG, and there's quite a lot of it. You will level powering yourself up. You've got abilities to pick from. These are broken up into 4 different categories. There is fighter, ranger, wizard, and then the godlike abilities.
Yeah. Fighter, ranger, wizard, and then godlike abilities which apply to everything, and then your companions.
Fighter is basically your melee and tank focus. Ranger is range weapons as well as stealth. The wizard is your mage, and then the godlike abilities you unlock no matter which class spec you decide to go with. These are mostly tied to the main story quest. You start off with backstab as your first godlike ability. The next one that I unlocked was this AoE damage and heal ability, and then I also got a passive HP boost as well. It looks like, based on what I see here, there's going to be 4 additional active and passive skills that you unlock later on. I should note that you can mix and match as you please from the 3 different class trees, however you like. For example, I started as fighter, but I eventually picked up a few skills in the ranger tree, mainly increasing my one-handed damage since I was using a lot of one-handed melee weapons. There are both active and passive skills in those trees, and each skill has multiple ranks you can increase. You unlock more of them as you progress every 5 levels. And then there's also a whole section for abilities that you unlock for your companion. Also, when you level up, you get character stat increases called attribute points. These consist of 6 categories. There is might, constitution, dexterity, perception, intellect, and resolve. You start out with a certain distribution of these based on whatever you picked during character creation, and then for every level you get 1 additional point that you can spend. Looks like there's some diminishing returns here which incentivize spreading them out. You can also find gear that will add additional attribute points as well besides what's in this panel. Speaking of gear, there's a lot of gear to find in this game. One of my favorite things.
Do y'all feel like that's a little limiting on classes, just having just the fighter, ranger, wizard? I don't really know if there's any subclasses that get broken down beyond that. And I guess you do get the ability to rock different weapon types. No, because you can mix and match. Yeah. Trying to see the different abilities here. Yeah, you can rock bow, or you can rock the musket. You can go full stealth here with the ranger. There anything like a dual wield class? You mean the 3 classes every RPG uses? How many classes does Dragon's Dogma 2 have? Dragon's Dogma 2 had 10 vocations. Yeah, you had the fighter, the archer, the mage. Okay, so they're your typical ones, right? But then you had the thief, the warrior, which is what we played as, the sorcerer, the mystic spear hand. That was really cool. The trickster, the magic archer. So just variations, but they were definitely their own vocation there. And then warfare. Okay, maybe it was just 10. This game's probably going to get modded too. Yeah. I was just curious. Maybe there's more to the trees though. So we'll keep watching.
These are mostly tied to the main story quest. You start off with backstab as your first godlike ability. The next one that I unlocked was this AoE damage and heal ability, and then I also got a passive.
We need D&D level of classes. You see that Elon Musk is looking to buy something. What was it, like the rights, D&D or some shit?
HP boost as well. It looks like, based on what I see here, there's going to be 4 additional active and passive skills that you unlock later on. I should note that you can mix and match as you please from the 3 different class trees, however you like. like. For example, I started as fighter, but I eventually picked up a few skills in the ranger tree, mainly increasing my one-handed damage since I was using a lot of one-handed melee weapons. There are both active and passive skills in those trees, and each skill has multiple ranks you can increase. You unlock more of them as you progress every 5 levels. And then there's also a whole section for abilities that you unlock for your companion.
Increase the health of general. Oh, no. I know I'm like blocking all this. Unbending defense reduces incoming damage. Okay.
Also, when you level up, you get character stat increases called attribute points. These consist of some of my favorite things, looking around, getting the game, and there might be even more. That's just what I've found so far. These include muskets, axes, bows, daggers, great axes.
Oh, here we go.
Builds based on besides what's in this panel. Speaking of gear, there's a lot of gear to find in this game. One of my favorite things, looking around, getting good gear, trying different builds based on the unique gear that I find. Massive amounts of variety here. In fact, I counted 15 different classes of weapons in the game, and there might be even more. That's just what I found so far. These include muskets, axes, bows, daggers, great axes, grimoires, pistols, spears, wands, and there is more. In addition to the weapons, you've also got armor. There is a base armor, which basically consists of like your chest, shoulders, and legs. It's one piece just called armor. And then there is also a slot for gloves, a slot for boots, an amulet, and 2 ring slots. And then for all of the gear that you find, it's going to drop in different rarities and quality, with the most valuable gear being uniques, the yellow items that are of high value and also come with special bonuses. Here's some examples of some of the uniques that I was wearing with my character. I had Wayfarer's armor, which is a tanky piece, regenerates health when I'm below 20% and also adds 10% move speed. I had gloves of the Strangler, which gave 10% crit chance and 20% bonus stealth damage. The Arcanist boots I found atop the tower, granted 5% bonus healing and 10% move speed. I found the Title Ring, which made it so that I would regenerate health whenever standing in water. The Vindictive Band, which gave critical hits, making them deal poison damage. My one-handed sword was last light of the day. Killing enemies with it would restore 3% of my health, and then hits also deal fire damage. And then my shield, Wind and Wave, added 10% move speed as well as giving me frost resist. And those are just some of the uniques that I was using for my build towards the end of my playtime. There were many more that I found. I want to say I found like 15 to 20 uniques in my time playing the game, but that's just the stuff there that I was wearing. Items are going to be dropping all over the place. You'll find them in chests. You will find them on corpses. You will find them on enemies that you kill. You're going to get a lot of different types of weapons. You'll see many stacks of like a one-handed common sword, and you can choose to either store those, sell them, or break them down for crafting resources. And all of that gear can be ranked up and enchanted as well, making it stronger, moving it through the tiers, increasing its quality and rarity. Okay, so that is the recap. Let's go on to my thoughts of the game thus far. In general, as I covered at the top, I really like what I've seen of Avowed. I'm thoroughly enjoying this game. The amount of detail packed into every corner of the world. I love the loot. I love finding yellow unique gear with the bonus stats. It's exciting every time I get a new piece. I think the combat feels solid. Like I said, melee combat in particular is leagues better than it was in Skyrim. Visuals of the game overall I find quite pleasant. I do like the fact that they went rather bold with their coloring. This is especially good looking when it comes to nighttime. Many of the plants in the environment have this bioluminescent glow, which just looks really cool. The game is also really polished from what I saw. In fact, I don't think I encountered a single major bug or glitch in my whole time of playing. I really like most of the character NPCs that I've come across, and again, that's like low priority for me, but what I saw was pretty good. The game seems like it's going to be pretty big. If that first zone was any indication, depending on the number of zones that they have, we're looking at potentially many hours of exploration here, which I'm excited to see how that pans out at full release. Also, quite a lot of funny moments. Like, for example, one of my early companions, after coming up on shore shipwrecked, I jumped in the water. I was just looking for loot or something, and my companion was like, you're gonna go swimming after everything that's happened? Because yeah, my ship just crashed and I was washed ashore. But yeah, it is strange that I wanted to go back in the water, right? Maybe I wanted to rinse off. Or at one point I came up to a pyromancer who was tinkering with a spell and then proceeded to blow himself up.
Yes, they'll never stop me.
As for my feedback or the things that I'm not loving so far, probably one of the biggest ones is the UI, specifically the combat-related UI, like enemy health bars and the damage pop-up numbers. They seem really out of place with the rest of the game. Like they seem out of place with the immersion and the environment and the world. And
they kind of take you out of it
with the rest of the UI. The combat UI, combat-related UI, I got used to it, but it really stuck out to me initially as like, whoa, I don't think this looks good. It doesn't jive. Something wasn't clicking with me. I also don't
You can edit the UI. Good, good. Yeah, I mean, this may be one of those games you go in there where you turn the damage numbers off. I know it's like little things like that, guys. But yeah, in some ways, it can kind of break that immersion for you. Getting the option to turn it off or on is really good.
love that as the main character, you have to have this fungal stuff on your face. It's part of the godlike attributes. Now, you can hide it so that you don't actually see it on your character, but it's part of the narrative of you are a god touched, and other people notice that you're a god touched because you've got like basically a coral reef growing out of your face. You can't not have it. You have to have some variation of it. You can just hide it so that you don't see it. But yeah, I was like, okay, whatever. Performance, gotta say, was a bit all over the place. This is also probably one of the bigger negatives. The first day of playing, it was rather choppy. The frame rates they stayed high. Like, I think I was still hovering between 90 and 120, but it was fluctuating a lot. And that's just as bad as being like it's not as bad as fluctuating at a low frame rate. Like, it'd be way worse if it was like going into the 20 FPS, right? But it stayed high, but it was really fluctuating. I didn't love that. Now, on the second day, I tried enabling DLSS, and that basically fixed the issue. It was pretty smooth from there on out, but it would be preferable if we could play without DLSS enabled. So hopefully they work on performance coming up to release. I'll also add that as much as I really enjoy exploring in the play space, the world does feel a little static. It is densely packed with points of interest, but it's also kind of light on enemies. There will be some locations, some of the points of interest, and specifically the dungeons, will have rather large groups, and there are some enemy camps that are pretty highly dense in number of enemies, but the spaces in between and a lot of the smaller points of interest are pretty much empty. I would love to see more enemy density, even if it was just an option. Like, maybe the higher difficulty increases the number of enemies. Speaking of which, there are difficulties. I played on hard. There was one more difficulty right above that. Maybe I'll try that at release. And another note in the dislikes or the cons would be that the game is pretty darn handholdy. The puzzles have all been very easy. The traversal locations are quite obvious. Any climbable area will either have ropes hanging from it or have some sort of paint on them. Even the loot and treasure is pretty easy to find because it all makes this kind of glittery, glistening sound, so you really can't miss the fact that there's loot hidden somewhere. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get to it. And even all the objectives and the things that you can pick up, they're all glowing. Now, I think some of the stuff you can turn off in the settings, so it would make it less handholdy if you wanted to be more immersed in the world and not have highlighted objects, or I don't know if you can disable the treasures making a glistening sound, but I just wanted to point out there isn't much brain power required for exploring the space or for finding secrets, but there are still secrets and exploration to be had. It's just pretty straightforward, if that makes any sense. But even with those negatives accounted for, overall, man, I really like Avowed. Like, I am so pumped. Yes, it's one of my most anticipated games now of 2025 after just playing this intro. Loved what I saw, loved the open world, loved the combat, loved the exploration, loved the character building, loved the points of interest, loved it as an RPG. Just so much I loved across the board. I think this game is great, and I cannot wait for its full release. Really keen on this. All right, well, that about does it for my preview of Avowed. Thanks as always for watching. I will most likely do a full review come launch, diving more into the positives and negatives, getting more into detail. Hoping everything holds up, though. Fingers crossed, because I like what I've seen. Thanks again. Until next time. See y'all later.
Good video, man. Guys, it's been a long time since I've played Skyrim. Were the quests hand-holding in Skyrim? I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to think. It's been a long time. I think Oblivion, I had to look up guides and Google certain things. Skyrim was very not hand-holding. No, Skyrim and Oblivion both were immersive questing. Yeah, because there was like weird quests. God, it's been so long. There was like certain quests you can only do this at a certain time of the day. You remember that in like Skyrim and in Oblivion? You could only do them at a certain time of the day, whether to start or wait for an NPC. Vampire stuff, yeah. No, this game looks good, man. It looks, let me just say, based on the first gameplay I saw of it, I think this looks a lot better. We'll be giving it a go. We'll be trying it out. I know it's launching in February. I think it's launching around the same time Monster Hunter Wilds will be launching. We'll definitely be jumping on Monster Hunter, but hopefully I think this game comes out right before Monster Hunter, so we can hit this game up and then roll into Monster Hunter as well. So it looks promising. You know, I would say that hopefully the road is big. Like, I like to get lost in the game. You know it's a good game when you go to sleep at night after playing and you're dreaming about playing the game And like, it just feels like it's just endless, like from start to finish. Like, there's just so much stuff to explore, so much stuff to do. You know, I there's not that many games that can pull that off. Elden Ring was one of those games that pulled it off. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom pulled it off. Skyrim back in the day pulled that off, right? But Skyrim also had a lot of things going for it because you had skills, right? You had so many different skills that you could level up. I remember sitting there like leveling up smithing and whatever else, and then getting like what the Daedric sets, and then you like clearly become substantially stronger by the end of it all. And then there were so many different builds as well. Did I get a Resident Oblivion? Oh yeah, man. I think everybody probably did, huh? You know, always got up to some shenanigans. But hopefully the combat here is good. He talks about all the different weapon types. I would like to have seen like more abilities and stuff, and a lot of like comparisons was made here to like Skyrim and stuff. I remember I went through another playthrough. It was years ago for Oblivion. I went through another playthrough of Oblivion. And like originally when I played Oblivion, like I went in there and I was like, no, this was Skyrim. I went into Skyrim and I was like, you know, I did the whole, like, had my sword, Daedric, had my Daedric armor set, whatever else. And it was fun. But then I replayed it again and I went like a full-blown summoning / conjuring build. And dude, that was so much fun. You know, being able to just go inside of an area and just summon, like, you know, I don't know, who were the big ice guys? You could summon the big ice guys and they would just walk around and just beat the shit out of everything. Magic in Skyrim was OP as f. Yeah, it was a good time. They also got difficulty settings here, but this is a full-blown single-player game. I don't know how heavy it is going to be on the RPG side. Seems like you just have the one companion here with you, but it looks good. We'll be giving it a go. Stealth mode play for me, yeah. I like the world to be challenging enough where you have to lean into those things, right? Like, I'm not a person that goes out of my way to play stealth, but if it's like a difficult enough game, like where it's like, no, you need to probably take advantage of stealth. Even if it's like, I need to kill this bear and my first shot needs to be me in stealth to get the 3 times damage to then follow up with whatever else. And you guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about, but hopefully Avowed, you know, has that level of push. You gotta check out the Skyrim mod. Coordinator, it's a skill tree overhaul that lets you beat the game with any tree, even lockpicking. Dude, I got into Skyrim. We even got into the mods as well, and it was fun. But at this point, it's 2024. We just need the next Elder Scrolls game. I know Todd says they're working on it, and I think it's going to be like Todd's final project, but I'm tired of modding out Skyrim. I'm ready for the next one. Please make it happen. It'll be out in 2030. I can't believe that they freaking put this teaser. And look, if I remember correctly, was this before Microsoft bought Bethesda, or around the time Microsoft was buying Bethesda? Dude, we lost our minds over this. Guys, this was 6 years ago. Hold on. 6 years ago, going on 7 years ago. It's ridiculous. How long are you gonna blue ball us, Bethesda? How long? I mean, seriously, who does that? Who else has done that? The balls, no. It's beyond swollen. It's fucking, it's deceased. I've lost a testicle. It's unfortunate, dude. It's unfortunate. I don't know when it's gonna happen. My concern is that if the next Elder Scrolls game comes out, I'm concerned that maybe I have changed as a gamer and I won't enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.